Okay, so we are live. So, so everyone will be starting soon. So I'm trying to ensure that it's live on Facebook, but it says keeps on saying it's private. It's not allowing me to share it. I'm not sure. But it's the same thing that happened last time. I'm not sure how to fix it.
Your mic is muted.
I was just saying if it's not live, or I mean
It
like it's not live on YouTube.
so it's live on YouTube, but we're not live on Facebook and the page. So that's the challenge. But we are live on YouTube. So the Facebook one, I'm not sure why the problem is. It does show me, I can see it, but it only shows as private. Anyways, so those of you watching on YouTube will begin soon. So thank you.
What app are you using again?
It's Riverside.
Okay, I don't know. Some apps does that. They don't go live, but they will go live later. Like no, they will go live. Private one should allow at least your friend to see it, and I am your friend. I don't even see the show.
Yeah, it only shows. So it only shows live on Facebook. Only shows me it's live on my page, but it's not live on YouTube. So that's the challenge we had last time. Okay,
So it's not
so
live anywhere, right?
it's live on YouTube. So, but it's
Okay,
not live.
just I suggest to save time, you can just do show as normal, and then you
Right.
do the what you used to do later on and post it.
Yeah. So I'll do something that's
Unless
uh,
unless we go straight to your Facebook page, maybe, but then it will be very different, right?
yeah. All right. So I will begin. Just no worries. So I'll do something else because we are also live on. All right, that's something we can't fix now. So we'll try. We'll just go on because of time. Uh, so hello everyone who's watching on Facebook. I just want to notify people on Facebook that will not, because some people are waiting there. And we'll begin. Okay. So thank you everyone for joining us. Those of you watching on YouTube, we have a special episode today. Joining me today is Hakim Dario. Hakim Dario is the chairman of Equatorial People's Alliance. And also joining us is Lual. Lual is the Secretary General of UPA, United People's Alliance. And we have Ferris Matthew, who is the Deputy Secretary General for NAS, National Salvation Front. So welcome, gentlemen. So Hakim, you're muted. Yeah.
Thank you. We are happy to be here.
And we were expecting to have Professor Julia Dwayne, and we hope that she will join us in the process. All right. So today we'll be talking about the resumption of the war in South Sudan. And so that's one of the things we'll explore. And I want us to explore it in the context of the protection of civilians and the leadership or lack thereof. So that's what we'll discuss today. And my emphasis is, why is it very difficult for South Sudan to be at peace? So I want us to begin by your own personal views of what is really wrong now, briefly, and then we'll go into the topics. So, Dr. Hakim, if you want to begin, what do you think is the main problem in South Sudan now?
Yeah, I think first of all, I want to greet the viewers and my colleagues on the panel. I think this is a great opportunity for different shades of opinion. The presence of multiple opposition groups here is the first of its kind. And I want to applaud your show and platform for taking this initiative to bring different political entities together here and give them the opportunity to be public facing so that the public will be able to be better informed and see what are the different perspectives of these different political organizations. So that's the first thing. The second is that, as far as South Sudan is concerned, I'll keep it very brief. I think we are struggling with the notion and idea of constituting a state. There is a great fault line running through our existence since became independent country, and we are not able to sort of like put this together. We have tried different ways of resolving the issue of political and distribution of economic, political, and military power, how we balance these different powers to preserve the format of a state that would be inclusive. We have failed at this test. So I think that's the issue. That's the main issue. Thank you.
Victoria, you're muted.
No,
Dr. Grant.
Yeah.
So, Honorable Lual, what do you think is the main issue in South Sudan now relative to the crisis and the resumption of war?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Quer Grant, for hosting me again. I'm always delighted to be here. Your show is doing really a great service to our people in South Sudan. Let me also thank Dr. Hakim Darius and also Fars for really contributing to this show. To answer your question, the problem of South Sudan now and has always been, it is a leadership failure. The political and military elites in South Sudan have failed to build a peaceful, prosperous, federal, democratic nation. Instead, they engage in a very serious power struggle, corruption, destruction of our country. And that's what continued to kill our people right from very beginning. In 2005, it was very clear that the leadership of the SPLM has lost the vision and direction. That is the problem. It is a political issues, and that is what is destroying our country. And by the way, when I say leadership failure, I don't only talk about the leadership today in Juba. I talk about all the political and military elites of South Sudan, including those who are in opposition today. They were part and parcel of that government. They're contributing into this crisis. But the person who takes the biggest share and the biggest blame is the president of the republic, Salva Kiir Mayardit.
Okay. So many people would say this is not just a question of an individual. So some people would say this is something that is systemic. Now, before we come to that, I want us to go to the elephant in the room, which is the resumption of war between SSPDF and SPLAIO. We've heard back and forth between the two. Now, there are many claims about who is capturing who and what is happening. And my main emphasis is usually where the civilians are. Now, where do you see this going? Is it something that will lead to an upper hand by SPLIO, or do you think this is just a moment that has given some morale to SPLIO, but then the government at the end, because of the resources, is going to be able to take back all the towns? So where do you see this going in the context of the resumption of war? So, Dr. Hakim?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think there's a bit of uncertainty in terms of the country actually providing, providing a transition that is inclusive. This has been the issue. The transition from the fallout in the 2013 war until now has created this and precipitated this situation where there's continuous contest over power, or over economic power, over military power, and of course over political power. This has been the main driver of this conflict. And now the problem is that we are not used to institutions for resolution of conflict through peaceful means. The political institutions that are in charge of the country have no track record of, for example, um, relying on mechanisms and systems for resolving conflict, and also bearing in mind the vital interests of the country as a whole. So it has become personalized. It has become like, in many ways also tribalized. So it is now SPLM, IG against SPLM, in opposition. And it is also taken as Nuer versus Jeng. So it's a bipolar kind of situation that the country has been made to, be only seen in terms of either, the SPLM-IO or the SPLM-KIR. So this lack of, the lack of a focus away from, this bipolar situation. And as a result, of course, we're used to conflict, used to violence. We've carried this from the SPLM, SPLA, the culture of violence, and now we are not able to move away from this culture of violence. And as a result, our people as well in the countryside are bearing the brunt of this. So in terms of where it is going, we have two, aspects of this. There's the dynamic of, tribal kind of polarization, and then there is also the dynamic of power concentration in the hands of the leaders in Juba, in terms of IO or in terms of Salva Kiir's SPLM. So this is where things are, and we're not able to kind of divorce ourselves from this whole system of failure that has gone on in the country, and as a result, our people are consumed. So this violence that has now started to, materialize, is ultimately going to affect our people. It's not really that because, the people are just, interested in violence. Our people in the countryside are not interested in violence. So the means for scoring, victory is defined in terms of violence, and not defined in terms of political process, not defined in terms of peaceful alternative mechanisms of resolving the situation in the country. And that's where we are caught up in this kind of volatile situation. So unfortunately, they have tried to, for example, the African region has tried to kind of host a process in which these problems could be resolved to the best interests of the country peacefully, but these have also failed. So that's why we are caught up in this kind of situation. And as things start to evolve, ultimately, it is going to end up in the resumption of full-scale war, and our people are going to suffer the consequences of this.
Okay. Honorable Lual, what do you think?
Well, first of all, before I talk about this war, let me give you a bit background on your viewers. First, when this peace agreement was signed, it was clearly an agreement that based on power sharing arrangement. And if there is anything people of South Sudan should have learned from this, any agreement that is based on power arrangement will not work. And from there was a clearly hold out from that agreement, or the opposition that believe that agreement will not be implemented. The government tried to engage with us in Rome. They failed and they walked away from the Rome initiative. We also engaged with them under the Domain initiative. They walked away. And by the time they left to Juba, what happened? The war that we are talking today, Dr. Garang, is a war of President Kiir himself, who actually started this war. First, they have attacked SPLM IO forces in Western Bahr Ghazal. That also followed another attack in Western Equatoria. After all that led to the crisis that we are all aware of in Nasser. All these are a clear declaration of war by one side. And I must thank the SPLM IO leadership on this. They were so much committed to the issue of peace in our country. Not only that, they have arrested the first vice president. The IG refused to follow the mechanism of implementation of the very 2018 agreement. And instead, they went to court, they arrested the first vice president and the senior members of the SPLMIO. That is the genesis of what is happening now. So the war is a reaction to what is happening. Now your question is, will this be just a temporary war that will eventually end at some point? No, it will not. Let me tell you and your viewers that the country, our country, South Sudan, is heading towards total destruction as we speak. Because President Kiir and his government rejected the peaceful dialogue, they have rejected the way forward. Instead, they are preparing to steal election and legitimize the government comes December 2026. And I have to be very clear here. The UPA, the other opposition group like NAS and the IO and all the South Sudanese opposition group will not allow that. There are only two ways for this country to head forward. One way is much easier and is possible, which is dialogue. A dialogue that brings everyone together so that we agree on way forward. A dialogue that should start in Juba between all the parties that have signed the agreement. And by the way, on that regards, I must thank the president because he has already now going to form a high-level committee among the parties that will address the issue of dialogue. But if they are serious, that dialogue should include Dr. Riek Machar. He should be allowed to participate in that dialogue. He should be allowed to engage with the rest of the colleagues because IO is a major party and a signatory. Once they're done with that, they need to come back to main initiative. We engage with them and conclude the process because we have already signed 8 protocols. And after that, they need to go back to Rome and engage with our brothers in Soma. And after that, if the peace agreement is reached through that dialogue, all South Sudanese need to come together, agree on way forward. That include the political force in the country. That should also include the civil society, eminent personalities, religious leaders, academia. All of us should come now and have a clear roadmap for our country so that we have a permanent constitution, so that we have a country in which we are all dream of. A South Sudan that is peaceful, federal, democratic, and accommodating to all of us. That is one way. If President Kiir and his government don't accept that, and they are just preparing to go for election, I tell you, Brother Garang and Dr. Hakim here, that this war that it is between the SPLMIO will be joined by the rest of opposition force in the country. The UPA will be part of it, and President Kiir will be out in power. The regime will be out. We will remove them using all the means possible. And after that, we will still come back to option 1, which is dialogue. Because at that point, we still need to engage with the remnant of the regime to dialogue with them on how also we move our country forwards. That is the 2 options that we have. So this war is not something that is light. But let me end with this. In order for that mission to be successful, in order for President Kiir to be removed, Right Honorable Netanyahu, the acting leader of the SPLMIO, must do 2 things, very important. 1, he must separate the SPLMIO and the White Army, because there is no way 2 can work together. Now it is a very thin line to separate the 2. And once the White Army commit atrocities, it affects the IO, and this could be the reason, one of the reasons now the leader of IO is arrested. I'm not trying to justify the arrest. I don't believe Dr. Riak should be arrested because there are mechanisms of implementation of agreement. I understand people died in Nasser. I understand our people lost and so many places. That I get. But they must separate the SPLMIO and the White Army. That is the first thing. Second, they must also separate the SPLMIO from the Nuer as a community because they are not one. IO is an organization. It is a political organization that accommodates all the South Sudanese. There is no way you can mix the tribe and the opposition group. And this is exactly what President Kiir is doing on the other side. They are mixing the tribe and the government and become very difficult for people to separate. This is the problem that we don't want to see in a new republic, South Sudan, that we want to see. We want a new republic to be based on a clear reconciliation. There is no any relationship between the state and the tribe and the parties and the opposition group. They have to be separated.
Okay.
And by the way, this is not a war between Dinka and Nuer. Nuer and Dinka have no problem. These are South Sudanese who have been used by the political and military elites by both sides, those in the government and those in the opposition. And this is a problem that is affecting our country. I don't believe there is any problem at all between these two communities. They have been used, and I hope Netanyahu manages to separate these two, the White Army and the Nuer from the SPLMIO.
Okay. So I want to focus on the things you've raised. The conflation of political movements or political parties or military movements and tribe. And that is something that's not very easy. So sometimes when I talk to some people, some people in the Nuer community easily get offended if I criticize the SPLMIO. The people in the Jim community get offended if I call out the government. So that is something that has been sort of constructed within the country. Now, it is going to be challenging, and I want your views. How can we tackle that? Because that is something that has become part of our social fabric. It is not very easy. Even people do it not knowing that they're actually conflating political movements and tribes. That's not going to be easy. And that makes it difficult in the context of war. Now, so what do you see the solution may be? Because we can say this, but it may be difficult because of the way the system is set up in South Sudan to separate this so that people see the Jing community is a Jing community, the government is a government, and SSPDF is not a Jing army. But that's not how it is seen. And then SPLA-IO is a movement. It's a military arm of SPLA-IO. It has nothing to do with the Nuer community. But that's not how we see it in our daily interaction. So how can we make sense of this to ensure what you just said, Honorable Lual, makes sense to people? Dr. Hakim, if you want to respond to that.
I think the fundamental issue here is one of, if you take the whole country, this issue of balance of power, be it political power, be it military power, and be it economic power. And fundamentally, what is raising, a big question in our minds is that the state has failed. We have seen the example of the 2013 conflict, how it erupted, and the dimension that it took, the tribal dimension that precipitated the kind of situation that we have, which is that this lack of trust. They tried to put institutions together to kind of build and bridge the trust and try to recreate South Sudan. That has failed. We have seen the agreement, the revitalized agreement over the last 7 years or so, has not succeeded to rebuild and provide a bridge for recreating the state in the country and chart a new path that is more inclusive. What we have seen is, the war, the tug of war has continued in other forms. This tug of war has not. It looks like I dropped. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right. Can you see me as well?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. Yeah. So Now, this is the situation that we have in the country. We have a failed state. And unless we address the root causes of the failed state, then these dialogues would also not really result in anything new, because a whole two sets of agreements يعني دي زي متوالية بتاعت اتفاقيات. يعني there are two sets of agreements. The first agreement 2015 and then the 2018. Both agreements have not actually delivered the outcome. And so that means that we have to go back to the drawing board, because the state has failed and the solutions are not forthcoming. There's Tumaini on the way. So this is a third effort, a third attempt to try to have another agreement. And all of these agreements seem to be failing, because now Tumaini it didn't get off. It just like stagnated. And so I think we need a different approach, which will do away with all of this and try something different that has not been tried.
What do you think that approach is?
Yeah.
In the immediate, because the state, building the state is something that is long term, but in the immediate, how do we start to approach that?
Yeah, this is because we have left everything in the hands of the political leaders of the Revitalized Agreement for Resolution of Conflict in South Sudan, which is RIAC and Salva Kiir, to play, the key sort of like leadership role in all of this. But they are there. This agreement has been written in their names. We need to put this agreement aside, or their leaders aside. They don't have legitimacy, first of all. And this is why Salva Kiir wants to organize the elections, so that he can steal leadership. He can steal legitimacy to continue as the president of the country under the SPLM, right? That's the whole game plan. Because the agreement has not worked. Now he wants to find legitimacy. This is the only window of opportunity for them to have continued legitimacy in the country. What the people should do, the people should boycott these elections. No one should participate in these elections. No one should give them the opportunity to legitimize themselves, right? And will they continue to impose themselves as leaders in the country without any kind of or shape of legitimacy, like what they're doing now? And the solution, as I look at it, is premised on going back to redraw the state, and the creation of a state is something that requires the creation of civil institutions and public authority with the consent of the people. That's the principle. That's the main principle of having a state, that you have to create public authority through consent. That consent is not there, and people are not willing to give that consent as well, because this consent and the giving of it requires the people to exercise democratic rights. So for people to exercise that democratic right, the system is designed not to allow the people to participate in the processes of decision making. So then, first and foremost, most of these political institutions do not have mandate, and they have not really gone through a public process in which they rebuild themselves and put themselves, for support by the people. So what we need to do is to look at the constitution of South Sudan. I mean, the constituency of South Sudan, how it was constituted, not the constitution, but how it was constituted in the first place. We've come together as South Sudan because of three regions: Equatoria, Upper Nile, and Bahr Ghazal. Talking about it in terms of blocks, that these are the constituent parts of the country as we know it in 1956. It was always administered as Upper Nile, Bahr Ghazal, and Equatoria. And there's another detail to that as well, which is that we have the different constituent social groups in the country that have not participated in decision making as such to determine and decide the political sort of like choices that we as a country should adopt in terms of institutions, in terms of the state. So we need to organize our country on the basis of these constituent groups and ask the mandate of these different social groups in South Sudan to provide us with يعني بيسموه mandate مش كده بيسموه mandate that انه احنا want to reconstitute a state, and then they themselves should also have the responsibility to mandate specific representatives from the different constituent groups, and then we can come together and sit and say this is how we should run this country, and this is what we need for this process to make itself relevant, a transitional kind of arrangement. احنا بنسموه a shared sovereignty model. This shared sovereignty model is what I was referring to last time, that we defer to the people, and then the people will give us the mandate to form and forge a process that is inclusive for all of the, like in Equatoria, you have social groups, in Upper Nile social groups, Bahr al Ghazal social groups, and then these social groups come together and determine that, look, this is how we should institute the reconstruction of the country so that we can move forward. And it's up to the people to determine how they want to live, how they want to coexist with each other. But of course, this is easier said than done. The reality is that we have military forces on the ground. We have, different ethnic groups competing for power, particularly, the IO and the SPLM in government. But the theory here is that we need to defer back to the people. Equatoria, Upper Nile, and Bahr Ghazal. We should accept to, organize ourselves as different regions and come up with a consensus arrangement that can be inclusive, that can provide some form of transition from the failed state, so that we can, begin to look at the horizon of how we're going to live together in the future. But the details of this is another thing. If these political organizations in the opposition, for example, can agree to defer to the people as a principle, rather than just to rely on force to remove the regime, we need to do the work, the political work, and at the same time, in parallel, institute processes for removing this regime, because the regime is the only obstacle.
Okay.
I think I'll stop here for now.
Okay. So, what do you think, Honorable Lual, in terms of fixing what you raised about conflating political movements, military movements with ethnic groups?
Well, first thing first, Dr. Garang, before I answer that, let me strongly condemn the statement made by General Olange a few days ago, who basically made it very clear to the soldiers that while you go to areas in Jonglei, I don't want to see anything alive. Elderly, women, chicken, young people, boys, burn down their houses. This is unbelievable from the government. This is clearly, it is a statement from someone who is intending to commit genocide. And by the way, I don't believe it is only Orange. This is a statement of the regime. Because there's no way a deputy chief of staff could echo that and continue to be in position up to the moment that we are talking. If the government is not part of that statement, the chief of staff and President Kiir should really work hard to arrest and fire him. But they are not going to do that. You know why? Because he's saying exactly what they wanted. President Kiir and the chief of staff are responsible for the statement made by Orange. Why do they want this? They want to turn this war into a tribal war. Because President Kiir, there is no way he can continue to be a president of South Sudan unless he turns this war into a tribal war. He has done it before. Remember in 2013, before the crisis of 2013, President Kiir toured the region of Bahr Ghazal in lakes Awil and Jong in Koijok. And what was the message? He was speaking in Dinka and he was saying, your government will be taken by Nuer. He was speaking in Dinka language. What was the purpose? Is to mobilize the Dinka to come to support him in the war that he was planning to fight in Juba. Not only that, when he was launching the road from Juba to Barghazal, he said, I would like to launch this road so that when I am attacked, you, the people of Barghazal, the Dinka, could come easily to come and support me. So he has always believed this war is about tribal war. He does that not because the Dinka are benefiting from his government. The Dinka in Warab, the Dinka even in his hometown are suffering. The Dinka in Awil are suffering. The Dinka in Lake State are suffering. But he used them to tell them your power will be taken away as a tool. Unfortunately, that's exactly what he did. He mobilized the jinn, using them for his own political gain. As a result, the innocent Nuer citizens were killed in Juba in thousands under the leadership of President Kiir. But then what was the reaction to that? Dr. Riak and the SPLMIO that escaped Juba went and did exactly the same thing. Innocent Dinka were killed in Bor, 2013. Innocent Dinka were killed in Malakal, 2013. Innocent Dinka were killed in Bantu, 2013, a ruling and demonstration under the SPLM-IO. The war turned tribal. So both leaders, President Kiir and Dr. Riek, IO and the SPLM have been successfully using tribal politics. Now, how do you do it? You start first by calling them out. People need to know this. This is not a war between Dinka and Nuer. This is a power struggle between political and military elites of the SPLM. And they are using both the Nuer and the Dinka, the innocent people, as a tool to fight their own war. They need to be called out. Second thing, people like you in the media need to challenge the SPLM-IO when they come here, or the government when they come here, to separate the two, because they are the one who are using this. Third, and we have to be very honest, at this particular time, we have no time to waste making people happy. I care less what I say here, whether someone likes or not. I am here with a mission to make sure we need to rescue our country. Dr. Garang, we may wake up tomorrow and there will be no South Sudan. And South Sudan is bigger than President Kiir, is bigger than Dr. Riek Machar, is bigger than Denka, is bigger than Nuer, is bigger than all of us. And at this particular time, I don't care whether someone is mad or not. I'm done with appeasing people. I am, and myself and the UPA, we are the mission of rescuing the country. And we are going to do that regardless of who is the obstacle to that. I know the SPLM-IO under Oyet could do this because Oyet is the right leader, because after all, he is not a Dinka and he's not a Nuer. He has no personal animosity toward any tribe. So he's the right person that for the job right now. His problem is that will he allow himself to be controlled by the radical within the SPLM-IO? That's where the problems comes in. Once he allows that in expense, because for him to maintain the power, he wants to appease the radical within the SPLM-IO by not separating the White Army from the SPLM-IO, by not separating the Nuer as a tribe from the SPLM-IO. If he allows that, nothing will move. We will be stuck because President Kiir will use exactly the same technique. They will turn it to be a war between Dinka and Nuer, and that's what they are doing. That's exactly what the Ulunj is doing. Not only that, Ulunj has been used now by the same government because the president also wants to turn this to be a war between the Sholo and the Nuer in Upper Nile. Because Nuer will think You know, our people, they don't see beyond 2 meters. When they hear Ulon, the leader of Agulek, talking like that, they will say, now Sholo are going to attack us. Sholo will kill us. This is another confusion because Ulunch, General Ulunch does not represent the Sholo. He is just an individual who is enjoying with the government. I hope the SPLMIO will manage that and the Nuer community will manage that so that they don't attack Sholo Kingdom because they have nothing to do with this. This is a statement by Ulunch. This government and the leaders, some leaders in the opposition who like to thrive on tribal politics. This tribal politics is not taking country anywhere. It is a dead politics, and the sooner we call them out, the better for all of us. Thank you.
So one of the things that is challenging is, as you said, the president uses his ethnic group to sort of prop up the support. That also applies to SPLM-IO. Now, there's an element of leadership that leaders use that as a tool to rally up the bases. Now, the people themselves who suffer from the decisions being made by these two leaders, they still support these leaders regardless of what they do for them. Now, if the leaders realize they are in a fix and they may lose power, it makes it easy for them to fall back to their own bases. Now, what is different is between Dr. Riek Machar and President Kiir is Kiir is the president of the country. So he is supposed to speak for everyone. Now, is it the power that motivates him to be able to say this, or does he do this not knowing that he's doing this? Because if the president speaks like that and he's supposed to be the president of everyone, then it makes us wonder what is going on. An opposition can use whatever it takes to come into power, but the president cannot do that. So, Dr. Dario, what do you think is the case why the president does that, knowing he's the president for everyone in the country?
No, first, the opposition cannot be allowed to use anything to come to the power. Because, by the way, if the opposition is allowed to use tribal politics as a reason to remove the regime using the tribal politics, it is not going to be long before the cycle of war will come because another opposition leader will use the same thing. Mm-hmm. We are not here in a mission trying to remove a bad regime to be replaced with another bad regime. That's not what we are doing here. Okay. We are here to make sure that the bad regime that in Juba is replaced with a regime with a new leadership in which all South Sudan is, regardless of your tribe, regardless of your states, regardless of your region comes from. This is what the mission is. If anybody that is a tribalist or a regionalist, these people need to be watched carefully because they are going to cause another problem later on down the road. Okay. Now, you asked me a very important question. President Kiir is a very smart man. He himself lived in Malakal. By the way, he speaks Nuer fluently. He knows this. I don't believe President Kiir has a personal problem with Nuer as a tribe. He doesn't. Because he stays with a lot of Nuer as his friend now, as we speak. In fact, in 2013, I remember President Kiir making sure that the Nuer sons that are with him in Tiger, that are close protection, they were protected. And he protected them as his children. But President Kiir is doing this because he wants to be in power for life. Okay. Sorry. And because to achieve that, he will use anything and everything. He will use the Dinka, he will use ethnicity politics, he will use anybody because he just wants to be in power, nothing more. And he wants to be power for life.
Okay. I just don't see I don't see how Salva Kiir wants to continue with legitimacy as the live president of the country, right? Using tools like SPLM, using tribalism. He has been doing this all along. He wants to survive, and he has been doing doing this all along. Look at the level of corruption that has developed and permeated society. I mean, the system, permeated the system. And that's the system that actually keeps him because there's no accountability, and he wants to carry this on. Now, you might ask, why did we form Equatorial People's Alliance? Because we have seen that the trajectory of the state, the future of the country, is already in tatters, and is going to take ages to try to repair this. And that's why we formed Equatorial People's Alliance, for the people of Equatoria to come together and have a say in whether this is a viable system and country in which we can order politics, in which we can dream of justice, in which we can think of development and transformation. And this is not happening. The evidence of the last 2 decades, since 2005, all indicators are saying that the country is being held hostage. And we don't want to be part of this tribal agenda, the SPLM versus this SPLM, and it's still about Sudan People's Liberation Movement when we are in a different country altogether. So I think it's just sobering that the experience of the last 20 years should instruct us, to have a say in this matters. Like I was saying earlier on, we existed as sovereign people, and we don't want to be held as ransom, like held as hostages for perennial problems that continue to unfold in South Sudan. We want to come to a quick fix of this and say, by all intents and purposes, for example, if today the people of Equatoria, find it possible in them to make a statement about this country that, look, we're not, and we do not want to be part of this and failed country in South Sudan. We want to govern ourselves, because that could possibly serve as a message to the rest of these political leaders who are engaged in, a contestation of power based on their claims of, liberating the country, claims of, being the dominant this and dominant that. We don't want to be part of all of that. But if there were to be an opportunity for us to have a say, like, the people of Upper Nile have to have a say, the people of Al-Ghazal have to have a say, then we can defer to what the people say rather than to what the politicians are saying. The politicians can talk about, systems and whatnot and changes. Those statements, those are not borne by track record. Even the political institutions that, including those in opposition, they don't have, the institutional capacity to be able even to run themselves or to run the state. So South Sudan is completely chaotic, and everybody just grabs what suits them. There is no social fabric that binds our political institutions and leaders together. Say, for example, the opposition has failed for the last, God knows, more than 3 years now, or 4 years, or 5 years. The political leadership in the opposition are not able to come together in order to have a narrative of how can we remove the hurdle of this hurdle called Salva Kiir, and what is to replace it. They are not listening to each other. Everybody speaks from their vantage point and in their corner, but there is no common platform. There's no common agenda to try to rally the popular support of the people, unless we are also convinced that actually this investment in net messaging and kind of directing the message to the people does not even exist. So it becomes more difficult for us to to think that, for example, the change, what would, even if the SPLM-I were to remove and topple the government today in Juba, what do they have? What are they offering to the country? It's very difficult to say. It's just simply because people are now forced to, to survival. SPLM-IO itself is forced to survival, and they're fighting back in self-defense. But what is the bigger picture? What is the blueprint that would salvage the country from the mess that we are in? No one is talking about it. People just talk about slogans, but there's no clear blueprint from the opposition, nor from the SPLM, IO, or other candidates who are vying for power in South Sudan to actually provide a blueprint of how are we going to transition from this failed state, this failed system to a new system.
I,
You
I
know,
want I
we
want
have,
to I want
yeah,
to ask you something
yeah,
relating to what you just said.
yeah,
So you said the Equatorians want to sort of have some sort of self determination of out. So how does that help in terms of what we're talking about in terms of ethnic relations? Because Equatoria has different ethnic groups, and when
yeah,
you separate the major groups like the Jeng and the Nuer would remain in Upper Nile, or they have their own country, and then the Equatoria becomes a country. But internally, you remember there are also internal dynamics within Equatoria. So there may also be the issue of domination within Equatoria. So that is a separate thing. But in terms of us talking as South Sudanese now, how does the way you approach, for example, the Equatoria um, People's Alliance, how they approach issues, how would that become a model for helping solve the issue between the Nuer and Jing or the Sholo within South Sudan?
yeah, yeah. That's a very good question. Um, Actually, when you talk about the diversity that we have in Equatoria, this diversity has been there. It has never been an issue. It has never been a problem because there's a historical process that has gone on to integrate all of these different social groups and for them to live peacefully with each other. Now, for example, just take the example of Arabi Juba. Arabi Juba has become a uniting factor, and it is an offering that emerged from Equatoria. It has its like presence in all of South Sudan now. And the majority of the people in South Sudan speak Arabic Juba, okay? As a force that is unifying people, different social groups, different tribal, groups now speak to each other in Arabic Juba. They don't speak in Dinka or they don't speak in English. They speak Arabic Juba, okay? And that has been the longest process that took place in Equatoria. So you have all of these different social groups living together. They have not been fighting each other. Have you seen that, the, uh, say, for example, the Mundari or the Lotuho waging war against the Didinga, or the Didinga waging war against, other communities apart from the cattle rustling? So and also because of this sense of identity, which is stronger in Equatoria. Today, most people speak about Equatoria as Equatorians because there's a concept of a nation in Equatoria already forged over many generations. So that is the issue of diversity. There's no conflict. On the contrary, there's celebration of this diversity, and there is, a historic process that has built this sort of social fabric. What it lacks are the political mechanisms and institutions that are formalized. Now, in terms of how the rest of South Sudan can learn from this is what we've been talking about this as potentially, maybe if we can find consensus, it could help, which is this, that the model of the union state, in this model of the union state, we say, first of all, our people, have sovereignty. And this sovereignty preceded the formation of South Sudan as a state. So we come from the end point of being a sovereign people. Yani قبل كده, all of our different social groups lived before South Sudan came into existence, even before the colonial powers came into, to control South Sudan. They existed as sovereign people. The Jeng were sovereign people, the Nuer, the Cholo, the Equatorians, all of these different social groups existed as sovereign people. They had their institutions, customary laws and whatnot and so on. Now, the starting and emergence of a state in South Sudan, right, means that we have to redefine sovereignty. We're now trying to move towards sovereignty, which is collective by all of these different social groups. Now, because of this process of moving towards a collective sovereignty of all of these different social groups, then the creation of a state is meant to be, to create a civil authority, a civil public authority by way of consent. The example of which was like the right to self-determination, for example. But then, did we then, in that process, continue to create a public authority that, by the consent of the people? And why is it that we want to continue to align and mandate, or I mean, like, allow the existence of SPLM-IO, SPLM of this and that, in order to contest power on behalf of the people? We are not capable of deferring to the people to gain that trust. But the issue here is that sovereignty is taking a different form of creating a state to become a collective mechanism by which we express our sovereignty. And therefore, in the perspective of Equatorial People's Alliance, for example, we want the people of Equatoria to understand that they are a sovereign people. They have what it takes to forge their own state. That's number one. Number two is that if they were to consent that this is how they want to govern themselves, no power on earth should stop them from doing so. Okay? And if the Jeng also do the same, then there will be, the Nuer, the Shuluk, and then they will come from a position of consent that, they will be responsible for mandating their people. We will be responsible for mandating our people. And this notion already exists in practice in modern countries, except that, of course, we have not applied it in our country. And I will give you the example of the United Kingdom, the UK. The UK has got 4 nations: the English, the Irish, the Scottish, and the Welsh. Here, right now in the UK, for example, you have, in the case of Wales, they have their own language. And there is English on top of that. They are all represented by 4 different football clubs. I mean, like national teams that participate in the World Cup, right? And it's still entirely by consent. They want to continue to live together. They carry one passport.
Right.
They use one passport. And yet they have different nationalities within the UK. And it's acceptable. And any of these nations can also decide to walk out of the union. The Scottish tried to do it some years back, but they did not get the majority. But there is the principle of consent. That they are a sovereign people, but they can decide to live together by consent. And that is a powerful legitimacy that they are giving to the system. In South Sudan, we could learn from that example. Say that, look, we are not against the principle of union and living together as one people in one country. But the principle is not workable at the moment because we have not participated in creating that system. We need to create that system by all of us to define the union, how we want to create a civil society, or rather a public authority, which we consent to in order to create the conditions for a durable and sustainable peace in the country. That is what we lack.
Right. So I want to give Honorable Lual a chance to respond to the idea of the Equatorians either being sovereign or using the model that they have, that they, according to Dr. Hakim, is that they have some form of a sense of nationhood that exists within Equatoria, despite their diversities within the Equatorians. So do you think that that is something that we can learn from, or is the option of confederacy something that we can entertain? Not federalism, because people need to understand confederacy, there's a more autonomy than in the federation. So what do you think?
Well, first, I respect and I appreciate Dr. Hakim Dario for coming up with an idea to solve our problem. But to be honest with you, I completely disagree with him, with these models. By the way, I watch him closely when he spent almost 1 hour talking to you in this show. And he actually explaining the same thing here. My disagreement with him is that Dr. Hakim is trying to solve the symptoms. He's not going to the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem in South Sudan is the leadership failure and power struggle that is facing us in Juba. They have failed. And by the way, now, when you see people who are calling for confederation, or you will see some South Sudanese in Upper Nile calling for separation altogether, or you see some South Sudanese even in Bahr Ghazal calling for separation altogether. You will even see the same voices in Equatoria, or people are also calling for separation. Okay, I don't blame them. You know why? Because these people are frustrated with the regime in Juba that is killing our people. There's no development. There is no peace in the country. People are suffering. This is what they are feeling. Equatorian, for example, they are really feeling a serious pain. They have a land issues, that their ancestral lands have been occupied by some people. And when they talk, they are told, we have liberated you. These are genuine issues. And unfortunately, some of these issues are committed by my own tribe and also other ethnic group within South Sudan. These issues have frustrated the people of Equatoria. And what did they decide to do? They decided to look to shortcut, like what Dr. Hakim is doing here. That, you know what? The people of Equatoria, they are good. They speak one language. They are one nationality. They are peaceful. They are good people. Everyone is good. But the problem, it is those others who are the problem. So you know what his solution is saying? Keep these good people. Let them have a demonstration. Let them live peacefully. Take those who don't understand themselves in whatever way. Let them have whatever they do. And then, so he's more of looking of his own solution for Equatoria. And he must know that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If the people of Bahr Ghazal are not happy and peaceful, people of Upper Nile are not happy, no matter how good people of Equatoria are, they will still be forced with the same challenges and the crisis. Again, we have done similar thing when there was issue in Sudan. By the way, why did we separate to begin with? We separated because we thought our brothers in the north, the political and military elites in the north, were not developing us, were not taking care of us, they were marginalizing us, okay? They were doing all these things to us. That was the reason we separated. Dr. Garang, we came, we formed exactly the same government, and that government is doing even worse than what our brother in North was doing. Don't be surprised. You could have the model of Dr. Hakim, have a separate regions, the same crisis. Let's say they are not in Equatoria, but they will be in Bahr Ghazal. They will be on other part of South Sudan, then the crisis will continue. Also, the separatists, let's say Dr. Deng Bolarwai, who is another leader who is calling for separation of Greater Upper Nile. The people in Upper Nile, who are they? The Nuer, the Dinka, the Sholo, the Anuak, the Murle, and the rest. Do they live in peace themselves? No. The same issue will happen. Let me even come back to Equatoria. Dr. Hakim, you have said that people of Equatoria have lived in peace. You know, during the Kokra, after the division of the country to 3 provinces, it was said that all these Al-Shalaguras Bitam, whatever shikil they are, Jenge, let them go. Let Jenge go. After you guys left alone as Equatorian, what happened? You did not live in peace. There was issues that there is a barrier domination was raised. There was these issues within Equatoria. Don't expect if the Dinka leave Equatoria and the Nuer leave Equatoria, Equatoria will be peaceful because it is a mindset. There are tribalists everywhere. Not only tribalists, there are people who believe in regional sectarianism. By the way, the danger it is with people who are calling for tribe, and we see that as dangerous. But the Torgran, people who are also regional sectarians are also dangerous. They are just a better form of tribalists. The tribalists, they see the benefit of their tribe. They see with the context of their tribe. This is who are they. The regionalists are better than tribalists because they are above the tribe, but they see the interests of their region. They think that we, for example, the people of Barakazal are the best. We are really the peaceful people. We are the people who could live together. The problem is others, the other region. Both the tribalists and the regionalists are wrong.
Okay, so I want to play a devil advocate, and there's a topic I want us to discuss, especially the safety of civilians between SSPDF and SPLM. I wanted us to discuss, but I wanted to ask you, and I don't want to speak for Dr. Hakim Dario. What if the people of Equatorial say that's our problem? If we separate and we become a sovereign state, our internal problems are our problems. So leave those to us. How would you respond to that?
Personally, I will not have a problem for Equatorial to separate. In fact, I would be, if we are going to have a permanent constitution for South Sudan, what actually we should do first, we need two steps. First step, I believe in a federal system of governance, a federal system that is similar to what in Canada or America or elsewhere, where you give the states, let's say the people in Equatoria, in Central Equatoria, in Eastern Equatoria, in Western Equatoria, you give them full rights of the power and the resources. Let them take care of themselves. Let them lead themselves. Let them develop themselves. You give them, but a federal system that is not ethnic, which means you, queer, if you want to be in Eastern Equatoria and you want to live there as an individual, you are welcome to be there for up to 6 months. But after 6 months, you get your driver license. You can work there. You can even contest to be a governor or an MP or whatever in Eastern Equatoria. But not as a tribe. You don't bring your community to Eastern Equatoria, but as individual. We do that system, we give it an interim period of about, let's say, 30 years. If it is not working, if that is not working, in the constitution, we should allow South Sudanese to have a right of self-determination.
I think just without
that, let me finish this point, you will come. So what you will do, you will give the regions their self-determination. If they are not, you give it to the states, for example, or whatever way we will agree. Let the people decide if they are not happy with the new union that is protecting them and is peaceful and democratic and prosperous South Sudan. If they don't like, they are free to go. I have no problem with Equatoria going. They can go, that's the problem. But what I know, and I'm not just guessing it, it is exactly what we did in 2011. We thought the solution will be independent. It will not be long. The people of Equatoria, the Upper Nile Republic, whoever is calling for separate state will be the same. By the way, unless Junubin decided, you know what, we cannot live together anymore, let you, Garang, take your piece of land, you and yourself and your family, and have your own country. I think that's where we can only have peace, because the issue, it is not the issue that we are living together as South Sudanese is the problem. It is the issue of leadership failure. It is the issue of power struggle. It is issue that we have the mental issues. We see ourselves as tribalists. We see ourselves as regionalists. We don't see ourselves as South Sudanese. And unless we accept ourselves and start seeing ourselves as South Sudanese first, when we don't reach that level, we will
Yeah.
continue to have
It's not, it's more to me, it's more to do with the system, you know, because even now, like what we tried to put the state together in South Sudan, we did not look at it as a system. And that is a big issue. This is where the failure comes, because we have not attempted to create the pieces of the puzzle, that makes up the system. So we did not have a design for durability, and that's why we failed as a state to create the institutions that would have put the pieces of the puzzle together so that we can stand up, as a viable system, right? Now, if you look at Equatoria, and I would even go further than that and say the Equatoria has got mass land, land mass. It's got a land mass, it's got a population. And the agenda here is the creation of a state, in terms of the transition that we talked about, like the sovereignty, the original formalism that was there as different social groups, and now coming to forge a kind of sovereignty in an entity called a state that is more collective. Um, so it is not to do with domination. The question that we have in Equatoria is not one of domination. Like, it's our problem, but our problem in terms of having the opportunity to create a state, because we have failed in Sudan or in South Sudan to create that state, and that's why we're in this chaos. So, do you want to, try methods that have not worked, to try to straighten up and fix the situation in South Sudan? And how long is that going to take? And you have defined the problem also only in terms of leadership, that you can change the leadership and then it's all good. No, it won't, because there's no foundational institutions. There are no foundational institutions. Leaders don't just, come out of nothing, right? Leaders need to emerge through institutions, through track records, through a process that holds leadership accountable. But if you just think in terms of like, okay, we just change Salva Kiir because Salva Kiir is the today's leader, and then we bring a better leader, that will treat people this and that. That won't address the root causes of the problem. The root causes of the problem is the lack of the state itself, the foundational institutions of the state that work. That is how I look at it, as the root cause of the problem. We don't have those institutions. And like, just take, say, for example, the justice system in South Sudan. If you want to fix that justice system, can you give me a time scale of how long it's going to take you to fix that justice system? The economic system, how long is it going to take you to fix that economic system so that you can see the benefits? The benefits will then come out at the end of the tunnel, to meet the expectations of the people. That is not something that just can be worked out, in a very sort of like uh, tactical action. Just change the leadership and all of that will go away. No. So we are looking at a more sustainable future. And this sustainable future has to be addressed much more holistically. So you need a state, and then you have the institutions of the state that would then deliver to the people in terms of those outcomes. And if you are given the landmass, you're given the population, then you have to think from the terms and the parameters of the population, the parameters of the state, the institutional framework. That is what you want to think about, and what you want to invest in. Now, in South Sudan, can we do that? What does it take? Maybe you need, the population to first of all agree among themselves that this should be the priority. But if the population doesn't have the opportunity to have that kind of say, and that this say would be the ultimate and final kind of arbiter in this by the people, then how are you going to be able to achieve that? So So we want to try different ways. So it's not different. The target, yani Rome, we're all going to Rome. Like, there are different methods of going to Rome. Maybe if we start from a foundation where we start with consent, then this consent, like you said, you don't start by federalism. You start by confederation and then move towards federalism. هسه مثلا اخذ the union, the European Union. They started a union which is not a federal system, and then move towards a federal system in the future by consent. That is exactly the model that we're trying to, propagate in this sort of like blueprint.
Okay.
Saying we have a confederal system that preserves the sovereignty of these different groups so that you don't interfere with their sovereignty. And then out of this sovereignty, they can move towards a federalism if they want. So you have to include the right of self-determination, the constitution of transition. And now, like say, if we want to transition out of this failed state, we have to have a constitution that guarantees the right of self-determination for these different social groups. If a different social group thinks that they are not a viable entity as a state, then they will join with others and forge a state with that on the basis of consent. And then we try to build the institutions that make a state and redefine sovereignty as such. So
Okay.
those are the kind of issues that I'll probably, sort of engage on to discuss. It's not about, this majority, this definition. We want to move away from anyone being a minority of another or someone being a majority of another. That is a problem that South Sudan has. You see, what we want to do is to negate all of that and say, consent, you are a sovereign people in the first place. The Bari are a sovereign people. Okay, in Equatoria, they are a sovereign people. The Didinga, the Otuho, they're all sovereign people. Then they have to define the consent by all of these sovereign entities. They have to define that consent for creating a public authority. And they have to mandate their representatives to be part of this so that no one is a majority of another or no one is a minority of another. We want to try this because this is about experimentation of creation of the state. But that's a different discussion and argument that we can have some other time.
So
But
we'll
right
still.
now, our common problem is Salva Kiir. We have to remove Salva Kiir and create the opportunity for us to then think about the future.
Okay. So well, I talked to Abraham Wolich, and we were planning to talk about the state and what is the nature of the state. So that will be a different conversation. There's a comment here, but I think it's one of the questions that I think we tackled. So someone was asking about. So let me see if I can show it here.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the second part of the comment. He was actually asking you about the Equatoria. So let me see if I can put this. With due respect, I want clear answers to these points. First, how exactly does the Equatorial Alliance solve South Sudan national crisis rather than different regional? Okay, I think that's a question I asked earlier. So if address that.
Yeah.
So I want us to finish because we've talked about these issues for over an hour, and I usually want it to be within 1 hour.
Sure. Yeah.
I want to ask about the safety of civilians, and I want brief answers because we've gone over time between the SPLMIO and SSPDF. The safety of civilians. This is what I'm really, really big on. So there was a report I saw that there were two people killed in the town of Bor. They were internally spaced and they went outside the camp and they were killed. There were also reports of killings in other places, but there's not been a wide scale massacres that have happened. But in terms of protecting civilians between SPLMIO and SSPDF, what would you tell them? Because it's one thing to say something, it's another to provide modalities. And I've called on both of them to be able to protect the civilians. What do you think should happen, and what would you tell them to protect civilians? Honorable Lual, if you want to begin first.
Well, this is a very important and fundamental question because, after all, whether the opposition or the government, we cannot continue to kill our people and expect to have a country. Who will we govern in the end? So the safety of civilian is very, very important. But before I tackle that, there is one point that I need to really touch really quick. You know, the regime in Juba is using all techniques now to mobilize people. And few, in the course of last week, Honorable Ezekiel Lolgatkwath made a statement addressing the diplomats in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And this is another politics of confusion and scaring the civil servants, that you need to prepare and support the regime of Salva Kiir, because these people who are coming, which is the opposition, are not only coming for President Kiir. They are going to get you too. You will not. You will lose your job. You will go with President Kiir. Okay. This is another big elite confusion. The UPA, the SOMA, the rest of opposition group, IO, who are coming, let it be known, we have no problem with civil servants. We have no problem with civilians. We have no problem with the army. We have no problem with the police. We have no problem with all the government institutions that are there. We know they are weak, they are to be reformed. But we have a serious problem with President Kiir and the elites who are with him, including those of Ezekiel. We have a problem with the senior member of the party who are allowing to destroy this country. If the opposition takes over, these are the people who will face justice of the atrocities they have committed, whether financial crisis or crime against humanity. Those are the people, not the South Sudanese. But then how do you protect civilians out of any war? One of the things, it was what I was talking earlier. If the SPLMIO, by the way, I have to congratulate SPLMIO on these missions. They did very well. They protected civilians. Not only civilians, they went even as far as making sure that the SSPDF soldiers that were arrested, were captured in the war, they hand them over to the Red Cross based on the contact I have. This is something good, because even the SSPDF soldiers are forced into that war. So if you capture them alive, don't kill them. They are your brothers and sisters that were ordered to go there. Okay. The real focus is that once we separate the malicious group from the opposition groups and the militia group from the government group, there will be a rule of engagement. One of the things that we will make sure both the opposition and the government will make sure civilians are off target. Not all of their life, but their property, all that have to be protected. That is something that I know we can do it through engagement within the opposition group. But what is more important, and this is something that if we manage to separate this tribal politics with our normal politics, the civilian will be safe. And this is messaging is a key here. And I am happy that now in social media, there are clear voices from the Jain community, whether from Will or from Warab or from even Jonglei, the Jain of Jonglei. They are start now telling their communities in their dialogues, in their Dinka languages, that we don't have a problem with the Nuer. This is something good. It is no longer now a few of us who are saying this. If this message continue to resonate, and it is also echoed by a few Nuer, if this is continue to be the message, these elites, whether in opposition or in the government, will be left naked, and they will not have tools to use. They are basically using the same tools, tribal politics. Everyone is using it. They will even attempt to kill the citizen. By the way, don't be surprised. The military intelligence of the regime can attack a village, pretending to be an IO, kill the citizen and blame it to IO because they want to turn it to a tribal war. Yeah. I have seen this in Sudan. They did it before. They could do it in South Sudan. That's why I also call for the region and international community to investigate such atrocities and crime, and whoever found guilty, whoever found involved in killing of South Sudanese,
Okay.
when the change come and we take over that country, justice will be served. So that the Nuer that were killed in 2013, the Dinka that were killed in 2013 and 2014, the Sholo that were killed in 2014 and 2013, the rest of South Sudanese were killed across South Sudan. They are not going to go in vain. Justice will be served. And whoever commit atrocities, including those who are like General Uloy now, that is calling for annihilation of the whole community in Jongle State, including those of Honorable Martin Ilya Lomro, who is dividing Nuer into hostile community and hostile and counties that are peaceful.
Mhm.
Such individuals are actually, they are preparing genocide, and I am calling for the international community to prepare to investigate such a genocide, and those people will face justice. South Sudan peace and tranquility will be built based on justice. And after that, there will be reconciliation among the people of South Sudan, so that we build peaceful, prosperous, federal, democratic South Sudan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Hakim.
Yeah, just briefly, I think, if you consider the statements made by the government through spokespersons like, or spokespeople in like generals, for example, General Olonyi, this already shows you that they're not interested in protecting civilians. They don't have this notion of that being a civilian, that being, the enemy as defined by, being on the side of the SPLM-IO. They don't have that. They just look at what did they do in 2013. They killed innocent Nuer civilians. They looked at them as the enemy. And all those massacres that were committed right in the center of Juba. And by the way, this is one thing that, you know, uh, really cuts across, because the thinking in Equatoria is that we don't want this bloodletting. And the regime that committed this bloodletting is none other than Salva Kiir's regime. So you cannot expect this regime to be, you know, uh, to show any care or concern for civilians. So by default, they care less. And as confirmed by the statement of Olonye, they just want to clear anybody inside. Ajais, or, like old people, chicken, anything inside. That's already their position. So they are not expected to be, providing protection for civilians. I think that's the default position. They are not offering any kind of, semblance of even pretending to be protecting civilians. They won't be able to do that, and that should be made very clear. We should not waste time about like appealing to them to protect civilians. They will not do it. They don't have a professional army. They are not well trained. They are a tribal army. For the last 7 years, they have failed to, to create unified forces, just as an attempt to try to create a national army. Because one of the issues that was addressed in the agreement was that there's no national army in the country, and that the national army need to be instituted. What Salva Kiir relies upon is Mathianganyor, Dot Kubeni, the Tiger Battalion, and a continuing mobilization in Bahr al Ghazal, for example. They just recruit militia, tribal militia, and bring them, dress them up as the guards, as the the forces of the Tiger Battalion or Tiger Brigade, right? So they don't have a national army to speak of. The country doesn't have a national army to speak of. At least on the side of the IO, just even to put a claim to want to be the lead of government in the country, they would obviously want to, show themselves to be more professional, so to be credible in the eyes of the world and the eyes of South Sudanese. that they would treat their captors, and they're doing the right thing. They're doing the right thing in the sense that, yes, those South Sudanese have got nothing to do with all of these tribal wars and this war in the first place. They are not the decision makers in this. They have not, they're just, being forced. And as I understand in Juba nowadays, they just, arrest and detain young people by force and force them to, and take them to the war zones, to the front line. These are young people or people who do not have motivation to fight. They are not even being paid their salaries, right? And where do they get the motivation to go and fight the IO? And that's why they will not, they will simply just, let it go. And ultimately, the IO will know that these people lack the motivation to fight. They are not really interested in fight. And if they fight, then they will be fighting on behalf of the family of Salva Kiir. And one thing which I noticed, like, was saying that, those who are in the army in Juba and those who pretend to be the liberators, right? They should, with their families, go and fight the war for Salva Kiir. But they're not doing it either. They're not doing it. Because ده ساعة المحك زي ما بيقولوا بالعربي. ده ساعة المحك مش كده. But they should be the one who are going to the front line. Why should the children of people who are innocent, يمشوا يحاربوا to go and fight on behalf of Salva Kiir? And I think the end is near. It's just, its days are numbered. This system is going to fall. Even in the Jain community, they already see through the smoke screen. They see that, they are the ones who are actually going to lose their lives, right? And Salva Kiir continues to enjoy with his family and make decisions for the country. The Jain have awakened to this reality, right? And there are voices, strong voices now emerging, whether in the opposition or even just outside, in northern Bahr al-Ghazal, in other places. People are beginning to realize and recognize that this is Salva Kiir's and his family's war. No one wants to fight. Your children cannot live hungry. To feed them, and then you're asked to go and fight in the front line. For whom? For your children or for Salva Kiir? So I think, the reality is dawning on the people that Salva Kiir has got no justification for war. He just wants to maintain himself in power by force or by elections. But this is not going to work. Completely, it's not going to work. So what we want to say is, my message really is that he should never be given another opportunity. The Jain have, awakened to this reality. They are not going to lose their lives on behalf of Salva Kiir. And that will result in a better South Sudan, in a better country where we can resolve issues peacefully. That does not also mean that Equatorians will drop out the agenda of separation. We just want a peaceful way of resolving issues. كويس؟ يعني في النهاية احنا بنقول انه شنو إذا كان في if there is need for us to unite, let's recognize the sovereignty of the people, let them take the decision, and let's start with a confederal system in which we then move towards a federal system by consent. And those who do not want, they can opt out and let the others continue with the union state. يعني كده by consent. ما هسي بكره هسي نهار the Jain if we say the Jain are fighting, then where? If we let them to, from the principle of standpoint of, sovereignty, they want to reunite and form a state, go ahead. Who will stop that? And others will join them, that they have a confidence in such a union.
Okay.
So it's all voluntarily, because the principle of creating a state has to be based on consent.
Okay.
And authority has to be consented. Thank you.
So I just want to thank you. I think we'll continue this conversation because we need to talk about the nature of the state we have and what kind of state we would have in case the war ends, in whatever way it ends.
Yeah.
Because
No, by the way,
nothing.
before you end it, let me agree with the rhetoric Hakim Dario on this. This war is a war that the people who want to fight the war is President Kiir. And the good thing in this government, President Kiir brought his daughter, as presidential special envoy. General Kolmanyang brought his daughter as a minister of trade and industry. Mama Nyandeng brought her son as a minister of environment and forestry. General Daniel Awet brought his daughter as Undersecretary, Minister of Youth and Sport. General Wani, his son, brought his son as the Director of Road Authority in South Sudan. These are the children who are preparing to take over from their parents. You, queer the Red Army that were promised that you will take over when this get old, you are nowhere to be found. These are the people who have messed up the country, and they are prepared to hand over the mess to their children. And they want the innocent South Sudanese who are not eating, who are suffering, to go and defend them. If President Kiir is serious about this war and he wants to fight, he needs to send his children to the front line. Kwal Manyang needs to send his son to front line. Daniel Owenako needs to do the same. General James Wan needs to do the same. But in order to allow their kids to enjoy driving the best cars in Juba, living in the best Amarat in Juba, eating the best food, and the children of the marginalized that are not eating, that are suffering, that are in no schools, are the one to go die in a tribal war, I reject that, and they need to send their children there so that they can fight the war. That is my last message, and I will thank you very much for inviting us. We'll be happy to be back again.
So thank you, everyone, and thank you for those who are watching. I want to apologize because we were supposed to go live also on Facebook. It actually goes live. I see it, but it says I should have made the changes on the flat platform before I actually went live. So I think maybe next time we'll have a better luck next time. So I just want to thank you. And for those also watching, we were supposed to have Professor Julia and Farish Matthew. They dropped out because of the technical difficulties they have. So that's why they are not here. But I just want to thank you. And we'll continue these conversations because I think we need them. You can see the people saying they're tuning in from Juba to watch this kind of shows. And for example,
you guys are not going anywhere. We are one people.
Yes, yes. And it's also good. Yeah. So someone mentioned on Facebook that, oh, someone saw your name, Hakim Dario, and like, oh, I'm going to hear his divisive talks again. And I say, look, we may disagree on issues, but at the end of the day, we need to listen to each other. We need to be able to listen to what the other person is saying, even if we don't agree with it. That's what we need in South Sudan. I don't have to agree with Lual. I don't have to agree with Hakim Dario, but I should be able to listen to what they're saying before I dismiss. And that's how we build a prosperous country. So, so thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop the live show now.